Rome was founded by a man raised by wolves. His mother was a priestess forbidden from having children. His father was supposedly the god of war himself. He killed his own twin brother over a wall. He kidnapped women from neighboring tribes to populate his new city. He disappeared in a thunderstorm and was declared a god. And that might genuinely be the least crazy part of Rome's origin story. Before Rome became the greatest empire in human history, it was a small village with a violent, chaotic, and utterly fascinating beginning. This is the story of how Rome was born, the legend, the archaeology, and the extraordinary truth behind both. The Roman founding legend begins in the ancient city of Alba Longa. A king named Numitor was overthrown by his cruel brother Amulius. To prevent Numitor's bloodline from challenging him, Amulius forced Numitor's daughter Rhea Silvia to become a Vestal Virgin, a priestess forbidden by sacred law from having children. But according to legend, the god Mars visited her, and she gave birth to twin boys, Romulus and Remus. Amulius ordered the infants thrown into the Tiber River to drown. The servants placed them in a basket instead. The basket floated downstream and came to rest on the banks of the Palatine Hill, where a she-wolf discovered them and nursed them as her own cubs. A shepherd named Faustulus found the twins being nursed by the wolf and brought them home. He and his wife Acalarentia raised Romulus and Remus as their own sons. Growing up among shepherds, the twins became strong, brave, and natural leaders. They attracted followers and led bands of young men who protected local shepherds and fought against bandits. Their reputation grew throughout the region. Eventually, their true identity was discovered. Remus was captured and brought before King Amulius. Romulus organized a rescue. Together, the twins overthrew the cruel king, restored their grandfather Numitor to his rightful throne in Alba Longa, and then decided to found a brand new city of their own. The twins chose the 7 hills above the Tiber River as the site for their new city, but immediately they disagreed about which hill should be the center. Each took a separate hill and waited for a sign from the gods, a flight of birds called an augury, to determine who would be chosen as founder and king. Remus saw 6 vultures. Romulus then claimed to see 12. Argument erupted over who had received the true divine sign. The dispute turned violent. Accounts differ on the exact details, but all agree on the outcome. Romulus killed his twin brother Remus. Then he named the new city after himself, Roma, the city of Romulus. April 21st, 753 BC. Rome was born in blood. Romulus had a problem. His new city was full of men, mostly runaway slaves, criminals, and outcasts attracted by the promise of a fresh start. But there were almost no women. Without women, there could be no children, no future generations, and no city that lasted beyond one lifetime. Romulus tried to negotiate marriages with neighboring tribes. They all refused to give their daughters to a city of criminals and fugitives. So Romulus organized a festival and invited neighboring Sabine families to attend. At a prearranged signal, the Roman men seized the Sabine women and carried them off. Their fathers and brothers fled in shock. Rome had solved its population problem by kidnapping. The Sabine men were not going to accept this peacefully. Their king Titus Tatis organized a military response and marched on Rome. A Sabine woman named Tarpeia allegedly betrayed Rome by letting the Sabines through the gates in exchange for gold jewelry. The two armies clashed in the valley between the hills. Then, something extraordinary happened. The Sabine women themselves rushed between the two armies, begging their fathers and their new Roman husbands to stop fighting. They had been absorbed into Roman life and didn't want to lose either their birth families or their new ones. The two sides made peace. The Romans and Sabines merged into a single people. While Roman legend focuses on Romulus, archaeology reveals a more complex story. The early Romans were heavily influenced by the Etruscans, a sophisticated civilization that dominated central Italy before Rome's rise. The Etruscans taught Romans how to build proper cities with paved streets, drainage systems, and monumental architecture. They introduced the toga, the Roman religious practices, the gladiatorial games, and even the Roman alphabet. 3 of Rome's 7 kings were actually Etruscan. The magnificent Capitoline Hill Temple was built by Etruscan craftsmen. Without Etruscan civilization, Rome might never have developed beyond a collection of simple farming villages. Rome's greatness was built partly on foundations that the Etruscans laid first. After Romulus, Rome was governed by 6 more kings across approximately 2.5 centuries. Each left a distinct mark on the developing city. Numa Pompilius created Rome's religious institutions and calendar. Tullus Hostilius was a warrior king who destroyed Alba Longa, Rome's mother city. Ancus Marcius founded the port of Ostia, giving Rome access to the sea. Tarquinius Priscus began the Forum Romanum and the Circus Maximus. Servius Tullius created Rome's first census and organized citizens into classes. Each king added something essential. Together they transformed a collection of hilltop villages into a genuine city with institutions, laws, and ambitions that reached far beyond its modest origins. The 7th and final king of Rome was Tarquinius Superbus, meaning Tarquin the Proud. His name tells you everything you need to know about him. He seized power by murdering his own father-in-law, the previous king Servius Tullius. He ruled through terror and intimidation. He abolished the Senate's advisory role and made decisions alone. He forced citizens into labor on his building projects without pay. He executed anyone he suspected of opposition. But the crime that finally broke Roman patience came when his son Sextus Tarquinius committed a brutal act of violence against a noblewoman named Lucretia. Her response, and the Roman reaction to it, would change history forever. Lucretia was a Roman noblewoman of impeccable virtue and reputation. After being brutally violated by the king's son Sextus, she summoned her father and husband, told them what had happened, made them swear to seek revenge, and then took her own life. Her death was not just a personal tragedy. It was a political earthquake. A nobleman named Lucius Junius Brutus, who had survived the tyrannical king's purges by pretending to be mentally disabled, carried her body through the streets of Rome. He displayed it publicly and called on Romans to rise against the tyranny. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The people of Rome drove Tarquinius Superbus and his family out of the city forever. In 509 BC, Rome abolished the monarchy and established the Roman Republic, one of the most revolutionary political innovations in human history. Instead of a single king with absolute power, Rome would be governed by 2 consuls elected annually. No single person could hold power for more than 1 year. Each consul could veto the other's decisions. The Senate, a council of respected elders and former officials, would advise the consuls and control finances. Citizens would vote in assemblies. This system was imperfect and would evolve dramatically over centuries. But the fundamental principle was revolutionary. Power should be shared, checked, and temporary. No king, no tyrant, no single ruler. The Republic was born. How much of the founding legend is historically true? Modern archaeology has revealed a fascinating picture. Human settlement on Rome's 7 hills dates to at least 1000 BC, consistent with ancient accounts. Evidence of significant urban development appears around 750 BC, aligning with the traditional founding date of 753 BC. The Forum Romanum shows early construction from the 8th century BC. There is genuine archaeological evidence for Etruscan influence and for the development of Roman institutions across the kingdom period. The specific stories of Romulus, Remus, and the 7 kings are legendary rather than historical. But the overall shape of Rome's development that the legends describe is broadly consistent with what archaeology has revealed. Understanding why Rome grew where it did requires understanding its geography. The 7 hills provided natural defensive advantages impossible to replicate on flat ground. The Tiber River provided fresh water, a natural barrier against attack, and access to sea trade through its port. The location sat at a natural ford of the Tiber, making it a crossroads for trade routes running both north-south along the Italian peninsula and east-west between the coast and inland regions. The surrounding land was fertile enough for agriculture to feed a growing population. Rome's location wasn't chosen randomly by a legendary wolf-raised king. It was the most strategically valuable position in central Italy, and geography made its growth almost inevitable. The kingdom period of Rome, roughly 2.5 centuries from 753 to 509 BC, established foundations that the Republic and Empire would build upon for 1,000 years. The kings created Rome's religious institutions, calendar, and sacred practices. They built the first major public spaces including the Forum and the Circus Maximus. They established Rome's military organization. They absorbed neighboring peoples, Sabines, Latins, and Etruscans, into a growing Roman identity. They organized citizens into social and military classes. By the time the last king was expelled, Rome was no longer a village. It was a city of perhaps 30 to 40,000 people, with sophisticated institutions, experienced warriors, and growing regional ambitions. Rome began with a wolf, a fratricide, and a kidnapping. It grew through war, absorption, and the genius of men who built institutions stronger than any individual. By 509 BC, when the last king was expelled and the Republic was born, Rome had transformed from a legendary village into a real city with real institutions that would shape the entire Western world. The story of Rome's founding is part legend and part history, part myth and part archaeology. But whether every detail is literally true doesn't ultimately matter. What matters is what Rome became, and what Rome became changed everything.